Yes, we are back for another episode of Serial Streamers.
We're back.
And you and I were kind of struggling, like, first of all, I feel like you always come through because I am so last minute on this thing. Like, I literally sometimes watch documentaries like the night before that we record because we're busy, we're whatever. But you always come through whenever I say, like, hey, I don't know what we should watch. And then you just send like a slew of text messages like, this is what we should watch, and you always come up with something. But this time I found something.
Yes.
We were going to do Katrina, which we might still do the Hurricane Katrina documentary. I think it's going to be interesting. But we landed on the Jussie Smollett Netflix doc. Now, what's it called again?
So it's interesting because it's Jussie Smollett, the truth about Jussie Smollett. But there's a question mark at the end. Yeah, so which is not, that's very purposeful that they put that on the end of the title.
Yeah, so the truth about Jussie Smollett with a question mark, and this is on Netflix, just came out 2025, maybe August 2025, right?
August 22nd.
Okay, so it's brand new. I was kind of chomping at the bit because when I was scrolling through Netflix, I saw his name and I'm like, I covered this a little bit on TikTok, like a while back.
Yes.
Yeah, because I vividly remember this case as it was unfolding, and it's one of those that, and I've said this before, I think that I've related one of our previous conversations to this document.
You did with Sherry Papini.
Yes, because I was one of those people, not to pat myself on the back, but I was one of those people that saw this unfolding, and at first, early on, I was like, oh, this is absolutely heinous. Like, and I watched Empire, so I was a fan of the show. Like, I knew exactly who he was. I thought it was disgusting what happened to him. However, when the details started to roll out, and before police or law enforcement had done that presser to say that they were kind of looking at Jussie or whatever, I was like, this is sounding like a Hollywood movie. Like, the details started to come out, and there were 3 specific things, but 2 actually that really made me go, you know what? This could be a hoax.
Fishy. Yeah.
It's when he said, number 1, that there was a noose involved. That didn't at first mean that this was a hoax. I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. Noose. Oh my God, this is awful. Then added with the fact that when they said something like, this is MAGA country, N-word, or, something MAGA.
Yeah,
I was like, this sounds like if I were going to say something happened, but it didn't really happen, I'm going to think of like Hollywood movie moment. Like, what are the quintessential things that I'm going to say that if I want to make it clear to everybody that
the motive,
this was a
intention,
hate crime motivated by a hatred toward Black people? You're bringing up like the most polarizing and sensitive thing, like a noose, MAGA, and all these. So, but I didn't want to be the asshole, because what if I'm wrong?
Exactly.
So there's no way that I was going to be like, oh, this is crazy, this is fake. I truly was like appalled and thought, it was awful what had happened. I was enraged on his behalf. I couldn't imagine how he was feeling. But then when those details came out, I remember secretly to myself going, this stinks. Like, I do not. And then we find out that he kept the noose around his neck for law enforcement so that they could see it. So we're going to talk a little more about that. So it started to stink. So now that I've kind of like, do you remember when this kind of went down?
Yes, but I didn't, like all things, I always feel like I just don't, I kind of, for better or for worse, like kind of keep my head in the sand. I got a lot going on in my personal, just like, with everything. And so like, I just kind of tried to get through my small world with my family. And so I don't really, I knew enough, but just what the news was covering.
Yes.
And the news, so I just kind of knew just a little bit, but not too much into the details.
Yeah.
But what I like for this documentary, I just want to say before we get into it, it was, I think, a good documentary. He's on it. He's interviewed for the documentary, which is that's something that's like
jump.
Yeah. So like and I've said it before on Serial Streamers multiple times. Like the one thing we're missing is like key players or key figures,
like access to the people involved.
To them. So right away I'm like, I don't even care where this is going. He's interviewing for this. In addition to all the key players actually interviewed. I think. Yeah, all of them did.
Pretty much,
yeah. The brothers.
Think of people who weren't,
yeah. So that, I think alone, that made for a better documentary just based on that. So that's worth the watch. That's what I feel. And regardless of like what the outcome or what it brings up.
Yeah.
I really think that it made for such a good documentary. So I was pleasantly surprised. And I honestly, when you sent it, I was like, I don't know. I mean, what's new with it? But no, it was great. It's great. It's current. It's,
Yes. And that's why I sent it, because I knew there was something, a twist in it that people may not have remembered or clocked. Because like you said, you're going about your life. You're worried about your kids, your family, like your job. So, you bring up a really good point that this documentary stood out because it did have such good access.
Yes.
Not every documentary, or that has one side, but then the other side doesn't want to participate. That happens all the time. But you had all the players.
Every single, the lawyers, lawyers on both sides, I don't know if he was like the head, the police chief.
The superintendent of
whatever.
Something in law, really high up in law enforcement.
He was on there. The brothers who were accused of doing this and who admitted, so that's what I'm just like, wow, that part alone, bravo, because that's what I want in a documentary. Not it to be one-sided or lopsided or lack of or just, where it's just like a screen with text on it and that's the producer saying like, try to reach out but declined to, interview or whatever. Yeah. So that just alone was great.
I agree with you. So that made it stand out from other documentaries. So basically this whole thing unfolds, I think, in January 2019 in Chicago, Illinois. And it is like bitter cold. Now, I don't know about you, Jussie, but I literally, as a native Southern California girl, I don't think Chicago is inhabitable for people.
No.
It's not inhabitable.
I know.
Like, if it gets that cold.
I know. They said me like where you're not outside the polar vortex.
A polar vortex. That's what it was. I kept saying it was some sort of polar event.
And they all said it multiple times. Like they remember, it's like they remember where they were at the time of this event, kind of, or what was going on that day because of how cold it was. Like it
that's
was
called
something
an anchor, like a memory anchor. So like we as human beings tend to think memories drop out of our heads because we have to fill it with others.
Right.
But like the memories you do tend to remember, they have anchors. So like if something traumatic happened or something that just like doesn't usually happen, something unique.
Right.
So what set that night apart was the polar vortex. And I was like literally thinking like, I feel like in that amount of cold, like that cold, you would walk out of a building and just die immediately just die. You're dead.
Breath would be taken away from you and
I'm dead.
Freeze. Just collapse. I know. Like, how does anybody survive?
Dude, I don't get how
I
it's
know.
almost like Mars. But they probably look at it like, bro, like that's like August in Arizona.
Yes, I know.
You know what I mean? Like
that's someone has, because my parents live in Arizona, and really, I mean, the summer in Arizona is
offensive,
horrible. I mean, like trash cans are melting on the side of the street, kind of thing.
It's disgusting.
But somebody had it compared it like you just kind of figure your life out for those couple months. Same as they said, just as you would in Chicago in the winter. Yeah, like you just kind of figure out indoor activity, what you're gonna do, how you're gonna travel, how you're gonna like navigate during that kind of extreme weather. You know, you just figure it out. But it's livable.
It is, says you.
Yeah.
Now listen, if I want to make a run to Home Goods, like I don't want the polar vortex to hold me back. No, I need to go to Home Goods and get a topiary.
Candy dish. Yeah.
No, for sure. Like I'm being dramatic, but it's like they emphasize like
every one of them was like
freezing cold it is. So getting back to the story, Jussie Smollett had just flown in from somewhere and he had some sort of, upper scale condominium, in a really nice posh part of Chicago. He'd flown in late. According to him, he got home and he's like, oh, there's no food. I'm hungry. I need to go get food at 2:00 in the morning in a polar vortex.
Right.
So there's video footage of him exiting his condo, walking outside at night looking for food, I guess.
He went to Subway.
Ends up going to Subway.
24/7 Subway.
I love me the grill. I get the chicken hot and I put it on the wheat bun with extra mayo, mayonnaise, and pepperoncinis.
Oh, there you go.
And avocado. So he was hungry, he says. So that was his excuse for leaving. Now, a lot of people are like, I'm sorry, but like, first of all, you're like this big celebrity. You don't make pennies. Like you're well off. I mean, isn't there like some food in your apartment, or couldn't you like go have a person go get deliver? Yeah. I don't know. But according to him, he's like, nah, I just walked on foot at 2:00, 2:30 in the morning, whatever. Go get me a Subway sandwich.
And there were other people in that Subway, though. I do have to say.
There were. So I guess
other people were doing it too.
That's true. So it's not impossible.
We saw the footage,
now again, I will go back to I would die immediately upon entering the polar vortex. My lizard blood from Southern California would never.
Yeah.
But he left that morning to go get food early in the morning, and then there's footage of him coming back to his condo and he's still carrying the subway bag, which we will talk about. And he goes back and he claims to somebody who's on his staff. I forgot this guy. I don't know if he's some sort of producer or house manager. I'm not sure, but he's in Jussie's realm. Somehow he works with
his
them.
circle of people.
Right. And he comes back and he has a noose around his neck or in his hands.
It was around his neck. Well, it was around his neck.
Put it back on, he said. Jussie, that's something I clocked in the documentary that I want to talk to you about and see what you think about this. But we would learn later that Jussie said on the documentary, he goes, "Oh, I put the noose back on my neck so I could show law enforcement." Okay. We're skipping ahead, but I want to talk about the psychology of that.
Right.
Like, that's pretty crazy. So somehow he either had it around his neck when he walked back in or he had it in his hand, but he had a noose and he had some maybe a cut or a bruise behind under his eye. Like basically he told
he got hit in the face.
Hey, I got attacked by two white guys in masks and I need you to call 911. So the guy calls 911 or calls police. He's like, yeah, I think, you can hear the audio. And they're like, yeah, there's a famous actor. I don't know.
Like a pretty high profile. Yeah.
But I need you to come. Like, I think he's been injured and he's been attacked. So law enforcement comes and they're wearing their body cams and you see the footage of them entering into his condo. And at that time, whether he kept it on or put it on, he had a noose around his neck.
Right.
So that's pretty jarring already. And law enforcement's like, whoa, there's a noose around his neck. And so then they're like, so do you want to take that thing off? And Jussie's like, oh yeah. So he takes the noose off and he kind of wraps it.
Yeah, they said he wrapped it up like a prop. That's what the police said. Yeah.
Right. He wraps it up. He puts it on the countertop and then he talks to police. But then he does say he doesn't want to be filmed and he requests that they take their body cam or they turn off their body cams.
Oh no, his assistant says, is that recording?
Yes.
And they said, yes. Do you want us to turn? I did not know you could request for them to turn that off. I was like, good to know. Not that, what would I ever do? But I just never knew that actually.
Yeah, if you don't want to be filmed, I guess you don't have to be. And they're like, okay, do we have your permission to turn this off? So law enforcement turns off their body cam at that time. So basically it unfolds from there. Jussie claims that he went out to get a sandwich. He was attacked. He describes them as two white men wearing masks, and that it was a hate crime because they put a noose around his neck. They said, this is MAGA country, you N-word, and they ran off apparently after beating him up. And then he goes back to his condo. Everything unfolds from there. Law enforcement starts to look into it, but kind of quickly, law enforcement is a little bit sus on some of the details. And so what do you remember kind of from there in the documentary?
Yeah, I know that they first start how do we find, how are we going to, where do we start? So they're looking at, and because of the polar vortex, there isn't a lot of people walking the streets, but they look at this time and they look at multiple, camera angles from other buildings in the area. They find some footage of two figures walking down the street. So then they start following them. And so that was good too. They showed them on a map. Yeah. Because there was something about how they took a ride share and then got in a taxi and then the taxi then took them to the location where they would be, or near the location where they would have attacked him. So yeah, so they just kind of show, that's how they start to zero in and track these two individuals. And I know that they draw a conclusion, and I can't remember if I think back, if I can open the files of my brain and flip through
maybe I can help you.
But there's something where they then identify because of, I think the ride share.
They looked at the ride share data.
Yeah. And who ordered that ride share.
And there was only one, they concluded that there was literally only one ride share at that time
in that area.
Right. So whoever took that ride share is probably very likely the person. Those guys
individuals that they saw
are the ones who attacked Jussie. So they do just that. They look into the ride share data and they come up with some names.
Yeah, and the name they come up with is somebody who actually has worked with Jussie Smollett as an extra.
Brothers.
Yes, they're the brothers. They're extras on Empire.
Yes,
and so that's kind of where this really starts to in addition to other red flags that they had. Why are you, what you were talking about, getting a Subway sandwich in the middle of a very cold night, but that's kind of the first clue where they start to zero in on who attacked him.
Yes. And it was very good police work. I mean, basically they were able to get all the records and it's pretty powerful to find out that there was only one rideshare taken at that time frame in that area, probably because of the polar vortex. So they're like, we're pretty sure these are going to be our guys. So then they do find out it's two men. So that fits the description that Jussie said. Two men attacked him. They find out it's the Osendero brothers. They look them up. And another thing that was curious about that was right away they're like, but they're black.
Right.
They're not white men. They are black men. So that doesn't match.
To go with what his story was saying.
Right. And Jussie was adamant. These were white men. This was a hate crime. This was not, So it's two black men. And as you mentioned, law enforcement finds out, holy shit, these guys, the Osendero brothers, they've worked with Jussie, or they're friendly with him or work with him. Like they've been on set as extras. So they're like,
that's interesting.
What is going on?
What's the likelihood of these guys being in the same area at the same time during this crime, and they know him.
And they know Jussie. So this is where it's getting like, okay, this is not adding up. And then law enforcement also talked about like who's going to go out in the bitter cold. That's one thing, but that's not like strong evidence. It is weird, but it's not strong. But then they're going, why did he put the noose back on to show us? And a lot of people are thinking, obviously I'm not a psych expert by any means, but I would imagine, and again, I'm the first person to say, you never know how you're going to react or what you're going to do in a traumatic situation until you're in it. Truly. And I know that personally. However, I did find it odd that at first I thought that he kept the noose around his neck and walked all the way home with it and kept it until law enforcement came in. But then you hear Jussie say in the documentary, oh, I put it back on because I wanted to show them. To me, both are weird. But the putting it back on is even weirder. Because if you've just been attacked, and being attacked, number one, is heinous. But if it's a hate crime with a noose involved, I would imagine you couldn't get far enough away from that noose. Like you would want, like, get this thing off me, like disgusting. And you may not even pick it up and take it with you. But if you do, you certainly probably would not put it back on to show law enforcement. So it felt like a show. It felt like a production that he was producing. Like he wanted law enforcement to come in and it just to be so dramatic. Like, look at this noose around my neck. Look what they did to me. And so either scenario to me is like a little strange, like a lot strange. And then there was something else.
Well, so then like just going in like line with, the chronologically. So then the brothers, when they kind of identify, they want to question these guys. They were in Nigeria. And so they had tracked when they were coming back to the United States. They met their plane at the airport, detained them, and brought them in for questioning. And they can only detain them for 48 hours. And that's when they kind of start, just like, do you want to talk? And they do not talk at first. But then they request a lawyer, and the lawyer comes in, and she's
quirky.
I was like, you know what? In everything in life, this is what I thought of. There's a bell curve. Because I'm thinking, I'm looking at her, and I don't want to get into like her appearance, but like, she seemed like it was like my cousin Vinny, like, that kind of a lawyer, but it's like, there's a bell curve with every, I was like, she passed the bar. So she's a lawyer. So she is which is not an easy feat.
No,
it's very difficult. So I'm like, so she is a lawyer, but she might be on the, the end over here where there's like a 1-800 number. It might be a billboard or something like that. But she's their lawyer. And she basically, they end up talking, and they are ready to give their account of everything. And they admit to being hired by Jussie to beat him up, and claiming that he had, and there's this letter that he had prior to this incident that didn't get enough attention, I guess, either from his production company or Fox. And it was like what you would see like on a movie where it's like the cutout magazine, different shapes
like I have
sizes.
Your daughter give me $1 million and it's cut out like
cut out glued together. But that's kind of where I'm like, oh my God, like I didn't know any of this from the original case. I didn't know that these two guys had admitted to being paid. And they orchestrated this attack for him. He said, like, there was a text where he said, I need something from you on the low. Jussie says, I did drugs at this time. Like or maybe he still does. I had things to hide. I wasn't a perfect person. And, and even the brother said he might have been reaching out to me to get like weed or something, like when we originally reached out to him, he did not know, the brother did not know he'd be reaching out to him to actually do something like this, which was crazy, But anyways, that's kind of, so that's where we're at with.
Yes. Okay. So you bring up a good point. The letter. That's another thing that sounds so freaking sus on this thing. I am sorry. So Jussie wants us to believe that about a week prior to this attack, he got this letter in the mail, which, by the way, they showed a photo of it, of how it was addressed. It literally looked like a 3-year-old wrote it, like just like you would see in a movie that somebody's like purposely trying to disguise their handwriting to look like not their handwriting. And then you want me to believe that you got a letter in the mail with cut out letters just like you would see in a Hollywood movie that, like, somebody would hold a kid for ransom or something like that. It literally looked like the quintessential Hollywood movie ransom letter. But he claims, and they showed a picture of it, that the letter said something like, "You will die, N-word," or something, like just going with the whole theme of like, we're
a
after
hate crime.
you.
Yes,
you're a gay man, you're black, we're racist, we're homophobic, we're going to kill you because of this, or we're going to attack you because of this. And Jussie, the way it's explained in the documentary is that apparently Jussie had told Fox, I guess this is the studio that does the show Empire, that he got this threatening letter. Like, and apparently they didn't take it serious enough for him. And that's when I think the brothers this is their theory.
Interpretation.
Yeah, the Osendero brothers say that that's when he took things to the next level. Like, bitch, you're not gonna take me seriously. Well, watch what I'm gonna do now. You're gonna take me serious after this attack. The Osendero brothers say that what happened next was they got a text. One of them got a text that said, "Hey, I need some help on the low," which was they interpreted that to mean like, I need you to do something really heinous right now. And basically they say that Jussie said, "I want you to beat me up. I want you to beat me up. This is what we do in Hollywood. Like, it's really not that big of a deal." Like, that's kind of how he explained it to them, according to the brothers. And so, and they claim that there's a check that he wrote. I think it was $3,500.
They have a picture of it.
They have a picture of the check that the check was cashed.
There is a memo. Do you remember what there's a memo on it? And I couldn't see it.
It might have said something about fitness training, because I do remember in previously covering this, Jussie said that he wrote them a check because they were going to get him in shape. Or
and he went like they are like bodybuilders or something. And he said that he was receiving training.
Could be true. But they say that no, that he cut them a check and they set it all up, and they took the taxi cab and the Uber, and they knew when he was going to be out of his house because it was staged by him. And they did this fake attack so that he could get attention, be the leader of some, movement. This was all around the time of, I want to say, like George Floyd, and there was another one.
I know, I wrote it down, but there's another case that is horrible,
awful crime of a 16-year-old
that was shot
shot 16 times. Shot 16 times
with
by
a lot
law
of
enforcement, and it wasn't okay. It was not,
and a
warranted.
lot of covering up of evidence and deletion of video footage and all this kind of stuff. Yeah,
and we're going to talk about our theories later, but I think that all kind of played into Jussie's motivation for staging this hate crime. But then things evolve. Basically, law enforcement gets to the point of, all right, we've got these brothers admitting that they did it. They've got a check.
We can track their location at that time.
Their location. They were the ones that took the rideshare. Their names were on the Uber or whatever, the cab, yada, yada. They knew Jussie, da-da-da-da. And then there were things that were already sus about Jussie, that they were already like, okay, all this makes sense. Jussie's lying. So then basically he's forced to turn himself in. Otherwise he's going to be arrested. So they charge him with basically like faking.
Fraudulent, lying.
A hate crime. Yeah. And it was awful. But then things progress. Jussie, to this day, let's just say, he maintains that he did not do this.
Yes, which I see that this is, again, I'm like from the start, I'm like, I didn't know any of I just knew just the basic of this case. Basically, that he ended up, or he was found to be lying, So that's another fascinating part that he was interviewing, because I was waiting for him. I thought it was going to go towards, he was going to be like, yeah, I did. I thought there was going to be some kind of an apology, or I don't know, or an explanation, like a psychological reason why he did what he did. But he maintained his innocence, which I was like,
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he says he didn't do
it.
And I can't wait to talk about that part of it. And I have a theory. Let's talk about our theories toward the end. I have a theory as to what his motivation was to do this, to do what he did. But basically things evolve. He gets charged. But what happens is that there is a top, like there's a DA, a district attorney, and she was known for like having a strategy of like, let's lock less people up, not more. And I know that that is very much like simplifying it, right? But that's how they kind of describe it in the documentary. Yeah, let's find other ways to, you know, work through these legal issues or whatever. So she offered inexplicably, and people were shocked by this, she offered Jussie Smollett a deal. She says, if you forfeit your $10,000 bond, you'll just get like probation or something like that. I should know the details, but basically like you will not do any prison time and this will all be over basically. And of course he took that deal, because even though he's maintaining his innocence, what's $10,000 to him? He just wants this thing to go away. And if you're somebody who believes he did actually do this, anybody would take that deal. Like, I don't have to go to prison, and I can go outside the courtroom and say, see, I won, you know? So, but then people were not happy with that. Everybody was in an uproar. They're like, are you kidding me? There's this famous actor who's wealthy and he's going to get off by just paying $10,000. And we put all these unnecessary resources toward his case when it was all a hoax. There's all these other real cases, like the gentleman who got shot 16 times, which, by the way, would look up his name because that is important.
I have it.
Please look it up, because I want to call him out by name, who was shot 16 times. And there was just all these actual hate crimes and maybe race-driven crimes going on that needed attention because they were very real. And then here's Jussie Smollett's case, and it's a hoax. And it's like, you're taking attention away from them and their grieving family members to put it on you, and you're a liar. Like that just, everybody was enraged, infuriated. So what they did was they brought in a special prosecutor, which is actually what happened in the Karen Reed trial. They brought in a special prosecutor, but these are two different scenarios. So they being collectively the community and, you know, the people in the DA's office were not happy with the other DA's decision to just let him off if he forfeits $10,000 bail. So they brought in a special prosecutor, and that prosecutor was able to bring charges and actually convict him of these crimes. So he was sentenced to some prison time, and he went out of the courtroom in a fury. He said, I just want everybody to know I am not suicidal. I am not suicidal.
And do you think he's saying that so that if anything were to happen to him,
he wants them to make know, I didn't do this to myself. Somebody did this killed me. Look into it. So it was all like, he's such an actor, in my opinion. I'm sorry. This really irks me. But what ends up happening is that there's a huge plot twist. So everybody's like, okay, good. He went to prison. He's going to pay for what he did. Like, this is justice. But then he appeals it all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court overturns his conviction basically on a technicality. And what that technicality was that he was offered a deal by the DA to forfeit his bond of $10,000. He accepted. He forfeited the money. You can't go back and go, no, that's not good enough. Now, actually, haha, just kidding. We're actually going to prosecute you for this. You can't do that. And to be fair, I agree. Like, literally, if we're just looking at this, take my emotions about Jussie Smollett out of it. I'm not a lawyer, but that doesn't sound right. Like that, if I am in,
you can't like take back.
If I said no take backsies, you know what I mean? Like if I'm a defendant and I think that everything's wrapped up because I've accepted a deal, I've given something up, my bond, which to me is not enough, but still, it was a deal. They should stick to the deal. Like that's not okay. So he gets out of prison and he goes outside of the courtroom and he's like, see, you know, this and that. And where I stand, just spoiler alert, is that the evidence is still the evidence. Just because you're out of prison on a technicality, which unfortunately I agree with, like, I don't like to see him out of prison, but I agree that they can't do that. They can't do the take backsies and like, oh, no, we're actually going to prosecute you when we said we wouldn't. But he gets to now be a douchebag and go out and be like, see, I was telling the truth the whole time. But it's like, that doesn't mean you were telling the truth. The evidence that the jury heard to convict you is still the evidence. We've all seen it where it's all on display in this documentary. And it is very strong against you. So that doesn't get washed away just because the first district attorney, you know, made a deal with you and then they brought in a special prosecutor, which they never should have.
Right.
That was their mistake. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden the evidence just goes away. The evidence is always going to be there. He cannot disappear the evidence. So that's where I stand on that and where I think a lot of people stand. So fast forward, you know, Jussie really did get off with a slap on the wrist, if you ask me. Like, I don't know how you feel about it, and we still need to talk about when the tides shift in the documentary. Not the tides shift, but they present a whole new side.
Yes, and that's where I was like, oh, I actually did create doubt for me.
Okay, good.
Because
let's talk about
that's,
it.
I mean, and then so Laquan McDonald is the name of the boy that was shot multiple times.
16 times.
Yes, and they found that there was like, you know, and there were multiple law enforcement officers, you know, had to, you know, I think were, you know, on trial for it, and because there was like tampering with evidence and things that they did to manipulate, where there was like, you know, conveniently loss of footage to show, I think how bad it was for what they did to Laquan.
Yes. So it sounds like there was some corruption going on with maybe Chicago PD, the law enforcement as a whole,
and them tampering with evidence. They have a long-standing history, allegedly, according to the people that they had on this documentary, and they used that case kind of to show this was proof of tampering, that law enforcement tampered with evidence and did things to manipulate things to
in the Laquan McDonald case.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
So they kind of show that as a comparison to, there was one other part to the evidence during this time, or a witness, which was, I forget his name, but he was a security officer or somebody who worked at a local Sheraton that was nearby, the Sheraton, the hotel. And he had seen something happen, and he'd gone out there with his flashlight, and you know, to see, and he witnessed what he said he saw: two white men during this attack, or right after the attack, but it was two white men that he had saw. And when he was attacking Jussie Smollett. And when he was asked, you know, to like pick these guys out of a lineup, first of all, there were no white men in the pictures that they showed of the lineup. He didn't pick the brothers out of the brothers' pictures were in that lineup. He didn't pick them out of that lineup. But there was, he maintains that it was a white men that he had seen. When they go back to that footage of him exiting the Sheraton, because there's security footage of just him leaving to go do something or see what's going on, the security officer, there's 10 seconds missing from this. And it said it's a very key part, because I think the individuals either passed by at that time. They
ran by.
Yes. But there's a glitch where that part's missing. It's like right before they ran by and right after. Exactly.
Like law enforcement's hiding something.
Yes. And so that's what they kind of go with this like narrative. So there's that part that is like, you know, kind of like that creates doubt. And there was one other, there was one other thing that they discussed. It was there was
a woman, I think.
The neighbor who was walking her dogs.
Yes.
And this is where, you know, we kind of talked about this with the what's the woman that with the ship that went overboard? Amy Bradley.
Eyewitness accounts.
Where the eyewitness accounts, where you kind of like, it's interesting because she's going off of what she remembered. She walked her dogs at night. Again, I guess, I mean, people live in this polar vortex. I mean, she's walking her dogs outside.
I'd be like, poor dog.
You just go to the bathroom on that mat in my bathroom, because you're not taking
piss on the carpet, because I ain't going out to polar vortex.
There's no way. But she is out there, and she sees a suspicious individual, and he has white rope hanging out of like the back pocket of his pants.
Right.
And she remembers that, and that was like her anchor memory, basically kind of going back to what you said. Like she remembers that clearly, that he had that. And she even had told the front desk woman, the neighbor lived in the same building as Jussie. But she had told the woman at the front desk, like, there's, you know, just be careful. There's, you know, a suspicious individual out there. So she thinks that she had an eyewitness account to his possible attacker, who was white, who then also had a rope hanging out of his back pocket.
Right. So then this is when we, as the audience of this documentary, are seeing like, oh, well, there's these eyewitnesses who are kind of backing up Jussie's story. And then, of course, there's Jussie on camera going, see, they backed up everything I said. So this should be, okay, case closed. You know, like he thinks that eyewitness accounts are absolutely foolproof, and they are not. And that is the point that I want to make, is that eyewitness accounts in true crime cases are historically unreliable. And I don't just say that because I believe that Jussie did this. That is a fact. Eyewitness accounts account for many faulty eyewitness accounts, account for many of the wrongful convictions, convictions that later get overturned because they find out that eyewitness who was steadfast, I know what I saw, didn't really know what they saw. Didn't see what it could have. Lawyers were able to prove without a shadow of a doubt that you could not have seen the thing that you testified to seeing because of X, Y, and Z. So I cannot give a lot of credibility, and just me being in the true crime community, not that I'm a detective, not that I'm a lawyer, not that I'm anything, but having worked in the true crime community and having a special interest in this type of thing, you know, this thing, true crime cases for many years, I just know that it is a fact that eyewitness accounts are historically unreliable. And even in my own case, like when the guy came into my bedroom when I was a teenager, to this day, I've told the story so many times. But, and here's the thing, and then this is going back to something Jussie said too, so remind me that Jussie said about his story remaining intact. That he used that word. I'm telling the truth about this guy following me home in my room. It happened. My mom was there, like it happened. And I can tell you all the details. I've said the story a million times. There's a police record out there of it somewhere. Like, what I'm saying is that I am truthful in my story. However, some of the details have changed. So over time, things like when I first would tell the story, I think I thought he had a long sleeve white collared shirt on. But now I'm like, did he have a short sleeve white collared shirt on? I don't know which it is, and I've told it both ways. And literally, there are some days, like right now, I kind of think it was long sleeve. But like there's times I remember telling the story in my kitchen and it was short sleeve. And then I listened back to and I know that I used to say long sleeve because when I first told this story, when I started my podcast, it was the very first episode that I told was the strange man who followed me home from the grocery store, entered my bedroom. I think I said in that episode that it was long sleeves, but then there were times that I'm like, I think it's short sleeve. My point is that truthful people, their story, it's normal for their story to change. It's actually weirder if my story was exactly the same as it was when I was 18 years old. I'm a 47-year-old woman now. It would almost seem like I'm probably lying and that I've rehearsed a story if none of the details change. Jussie Smollett said something that I picked up on that I thought was interesting. He kind of like, when he first appears on camera, he's like, he looks at the camera and he's like, my story has remained intact. And he literally says it like that, like so robotic. And I thought it was interesting psychologically to use the word intact instead of saying something like, I'm telling the same story. Like nothing's changed. You know, He says my story has remained intact. And the reason why I'm like clocking that is like, to me, it sounds like if you're a liar, if you're lying about this story, you're going to be so focused on your story remaining intact. It has to be perfect. But what he's not realizing, I think, is that no story is perfect. When you're telling the truth, it's not supposed to be perfect. When it first happens, yes, that's the closest to the truth. But 5 years later, 10 minutes later, an hour later, 2 days later, 2 years later, 20 years later, the details start to change.
There'd be like maybe a variation.
Our memory isn't perfect. Our brain isn't perfect. It doesn't.
And you're processing the trauma or the event differently.
Yes.
Depending on the time.
Details change, and it doesn't mean you're lying. And in fact, that's actually typical of a truthful story, that it mostly is the same, but little details might vary, like me with the white shirt. I actually can't tell you today if he wore a short sleeve or a long sleeve. I know it was white and I know it had a collar. I do know that. But with Jussie Smollett saying, my story has remained intact, and he even did like the hand gesture, it was almost when somebody's rehearsing something, they need it to remain intact and they think it needs to be perfect, but that's actually not a good way to tell a lie. You know what I mean? Like I think that a truthful person, their story's going to change inevitably over time. So anyway, I'll stop beating a dead horse. But he wants us to think that these eyewitnesses just prove his case. And I'm like, no, honey. You are not going to distract me from the Uber ride. There was only one Uber ride in that town, like in that area.
And coincidentally, it was these brothers
These two brothers, and you said it was two men who attacked you. Oh, by the way, they happen to know you. They have a connection. Oh, by the way, you wrote him a check. Oh, by the way. Oh, and also like little details like, He went and got a sandwich. I'm sorry, you just got attacked and you literally had the wherewithal to go pick up your sandwich and bring it home? Like, you must have been hungry.
I thought he got attacked after he picked up the sandwich. Like, he already had the sandwich in his hand when he got attacked.
Yeah, so, like, why wouldn't he have dropped it? Like, you're being attacked. Like, how are you going to, like, have that sandwich in your hand the whole time?
See, like, that thing, I feel like, you don't know how you're going to react in a traumatic situation.
But if you think your life is in danger, wouldn't you literally just be run? Like, fight or flight?
Yeah.
Run to safety. If you literally think, like, how does he know they're not going to kill him? They're literally, like, in his words, like, beating him, like, maybe mercilessly, and saying these really racist things. I would imagine you'd want to get out of Dodge so fast, like fight or flight. Now, again, I can't say exactly what I would do, but how does he know they're not going to kill him? But you're going to go and, like, take time to grab your sandwich.
Right.
It's just little oddities. It's not.
And there's other evidence that they showed that it was the brothers were seen, I think, the day prior purchasing a red hat, a bean, a cover up, like a ski mask or something
to commit this crime.
Right.
Like, literally, like gloves, mask, like literally they caught on a flight to their home country the day after it happened, maybe to, like, let things chill. And also, let's talk about the fact that the Osendero brothers admitted to it.
Right.
I still struggle. Let's talk about the counterpoint to that.
Yes.
So the Osendero brothers admitted to it within, like, 24 hours. They start talking and they're like, yes, we did this. Here's why. But then when the second half of the documentary is trying to basically paint a picture of, listen, these are corrupt law enforcement members. They were corrupt in this other case, the McDonald case, and maybe others. Basically, where we're at in the documentary is the Osendero brothers, they admit to doing it and they say how it all unfolded. But the second half of the documentary is showing that maybe law enforcement set Jussie up. Maybe law enforcement is behind this. Maybe law enforcement gave these Osendero brothers a really sweet deal that would motivate them to admit to a crime that they didn't do. But there is a huge problem with that. You cannot, law enforcement cannot just say, I'm going to expunge your record. That's not their power. They can't do that. They literally don't have that authority. So they can't do that. And also, even if it's going to expunge his record, why is the other brother going to go down for a very serious hate crime because he loves his brother so much that he'll get his record expunged? I'm sorry, they were already walking free and working on a very popular movie. Their lives, they were thriving, in my opinion. So I don't think that law enforcement saying, hey, we'll expunge your record, just admit to this very serious hate crime over here, when they're, like, thriving in their lives. Like, they have, like...
Were they?
Yeah, I mean, like, they were on... Empire was a huge show.
I know, but they were extras.
They're besties with Jussie Smollett. Like, in their... Like... thriving more than they could have.
Because they seemed like very desperate towards the end of the, like, they're they're putting out their book. One of them couldn't even get the title correct.
Yes.
Like,
I don't mean thriving like they're, like, riding high. I think that things were going well for them, much better than maybe a lot of people around them.
Yeah.
Like, from their country, like they literally were having, like, they had a celebrity client, they had a celebrity friend. They were on a
big
huge
show, right.
Even though they were just extras. I just don't buy that they would be so desperate to get one of the brothers' records expunged, which, by the way, law enforcement can't do that. So that's false. That the other brother be like, yeah, I'm going to go down with you for this hate crime too. Like, I'm going to admit to this very serious crime, when things were going pretty well in his life. You know what I mean? He had some good things going for him, I should say. Thriving is a strong word.
Yeah, because I feel like that's where, I mean, I'll say that, like, of course, it seemed like all the evidence pointing toward Jussie, but I will say, like, I do have a little bit of, now there is, like, planted doubt, because even the way the brothers acted at the end, and I mean, just to go, I know they weren't technically thriving, but they were doing well, but they were desperate enough for $3,500 to, like, commit this crime, or go be in cahoots with him to do it. So they're not, like, the cream of the crop. They're not firing on all cylinders.
No,
they're not, like,
the
smartest duo.
No,
do you know
I agree
what I mean?
with that. Yeah.
So at the end, like, it just seemed like, well, maybe would they, they just seemed like, I mean, they were, what do you call it? Like, they're pawns. Thank you. In this whole thing, whether it was on either side, whether it was Jussie's or the police,
Absolutely.
So that's the thing, is, like, their credibility went down for me a little bit, because I was just like, well, yeah, maybe they would do. I mean, if they're willing to do this, why wouldn't they be willing to do it for the police as well? Why wouldn't they be willing to do something, like, shady and not truthful and commit Do you know what I mean?
But why would the one brother go down for the other?
I mean, no they don't seem smart.
I know, but that just sounds like that's asinine to me.
But they were both going to go down for him anyways, right?
They
thought they weren't going to get caught.
Yeah, and also I will say that the power dynamic. So my theory is like, yes, these brothers, it sounds crazy to us. Like, who would do this for anybody? Why didn't they just walk away? They had stars in their eyes. Like Jussie Smollett, to them, I think that they were like, oh my gosh, we have a really big celebrity. We want to be around him. And that is a real thing. Like, celebrities have that power over certain people, especially vulnerable people, to be like, the power dynamic is so off that Jussie is way up here and these guys are just like two average guys, and he's fucking with them. Like, he's giving them the time of day, he's giving them attention. So I can see where they could be talked into doing something wild for him, because he's just kind of got that charm. He's got that celebrity power. They're, just average,
and they're looking for
Joes.
like a leg up kind of thing. Yeah,
looking for a leg up. So I can see, it sounds wild, but it's like, I can see where they could be talked into doing something. And it was $3,500. Now, listen, $3,500 is a lot of money no matter what.
Right.
But certainly to extras in a movie who probably aren't well off, that is a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe they like that also was
very motivating.
Yeah. And maybe there was more money to come. I don't know. But the evidence for me is too strong. I am not going to be distracted by, also, like, literally law enforcement. Like, what is law enforcement's motive to frame this actor for this thing, and then have, like, it just, there would have to be so many people involved to pull this off. And when when the motivation is not making sense for me, that's when I go, oh, no. But Jussie Smollett's motivation, my theory,
I was going to ask you,
does make sense
to
me.
And what do you think?
So Jussie Smollett mentioned in the documentary that it was mentioned that his mom was a Black Panther. So certainly she's like this badass who's like fighting for the cause, the civil rights movement, like that during that time. This is what I'm picturing. Like, she sounds like a leader, a fighter, a strong force for the Black community. Like, that, this is what I'm gathering. Jussie was not. He was an actor, and but he was living through a time and seeing the George Floyd, situation, the Laquan McDonald, all these cases, and he was outspoken during that time. I remember, like, he would say, like, I support Black Lives Matter. Like, he supports the movement, and he's very. What this hoax allowed him to be and to do was to be a leader like his mom was, to be somebody that people admired, and that, look at me, I'm going to carry all of us through this, through my pain, fake pain, but through my pain and suffering, I am going to rise up, and I'm going to be a strong voice for a marginalized community that needs it, and I'm going to be that for you. Like, I've got this. That's what I think his motive was. It gave him attention. It gave him power. It allowed him to be seen as somebody who is a very strong figure in this movement that is very necessary, by the way. Like, I'm also supportive of this movement. Like, absolutely. But he wanted that, and now he's kind of like his mom. And he even says, like, when he comes out of the courtroom, which I thought was very douchey, but he said something like, I would not be my mother's son if I had lied about all this. Like, he wants to use that, I wouldn't be my mother's son if I lied about all this. Like, it's just, to me, he's a very manipulative person. He is a attention-starved person. And he absolutely, in my opinion, lied about all of this. And it is a massive hoax. And I just don't buy the motive of law enforcement. Now, I'm not saying that law enforcement wouldn't be corrupt. You've heard me on this show talk about cases where they absolutely were corrupt. So I am not above that, like, at all. It's just, in this case, it does not make sense to me. Where is the motive? And also, like, nothing added up in his story.
I know.
Where's the two white men? All we could find is two Black men, and those two Black men happen to be names on the Uber. only Uber ride at that time.
And they could track their location, like blocks.
Track the location. They're buying masks and gloves the day before. What was that for? Like the rope, the noose just didn't, why'd you put it back on for law enforcement to see? And again, that's just circumstantial evidence, but it seems like you're putting on a show. It just, to me, the evidence is really evidencing in this case, and I will never believe him. Like
So why do you think what it would be his motive now to be interviewed on this doc? Because they show like he's been trying to, slowly salvage and rebuild some kind of name for himself, get back into a career in film or TV. But then why bring this up and rustle the whole thing up again? Because now he believes. I think he believes he has some kind of proof.
Yes.
That he was telling the truth.
Yeah. I think he thinks, well, first of all, I think he's a severe narcissist. And again, I can't diagnose anybody. I'm no expert. But I feel like that's part of what's going on here. But I think that he has to stand 10 toes down and be public about it, his lie, because otherwise he will be viewed as a liar. If he hides from it and runs from it and doesn't. So I think in his mind, he's like, the only way that I'm going to be believable is to be like, I didn't do this. I'm not a liar. I am in your face telling you I'm not a liar, but he's also an actor, a very good one. He was on a top show. And so he knows how to act. He knows how to cry on cue. And I believe he's done that. I just need stronger evidence on the other side for me to throw in the trash all this other really strong evidence. Like, I think it's a distraction.
Yeah.
From what is really going on.
Right.
That's how I feel.
Right.
But I can understand how somebody could at least go, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Let's talk about law enforcement acting shady in this case over here. Let's talk about, the promise to expunge the record thing. Let's talk about that these brothers may not be all that credible. And like you and I talk about all the time, like two things can be true at the same time.
Right.
I'm not saying these brothers are like stand-up citizens and all the firing on all cylinders. I'm just saying it makes more sense to me that they did it and they're admitting to it, and
based on the evidence.
Based on the evidence. So I don't know any of these people.
Yeah.
But I'm just looking at the evidence. I'm going, So basically that was it. Like, it all ended with like, they gave both sides.
Yeah. And they gave it like it was like the last quarter of the documentary, all the holes or the things that could be, they showed the, I don't know if he's not the police chief, whatever he was like the main guy part of the investigation who like he had to
top cop.
Whatever. They show at the end he's fired right before his retirement because he also tried to cover up evidence that he might have been drinking and fell asleep in his car, and that there was some kind of shady things for him. So it's like no one's kind of clean, but then that's what, so that's the documentary was great. Like I think really so too. I thought it was incredible. So I really enjoyed it. I think your viewers would like love to see.
I think so too. I highly recommend it. I think it was really good. Seems like there's like some twists and the access is really good. So they have all sides talking about this thing on camera multiple times. So yeah, I would say it's a really, really compelling doc to watch. Me and Steve watched it together and he's not as into true crime as I am. But we kept having to pause it and going, and then there's this, and then that, and then they're buying the masks, we're like, and now they're buying masks like the day before.
Right.
So I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. But we loved it, and I highly recommend it.
I love it. Yeah.
All right, let's get out of here. We've got some housewives to talk about in our next show.
That's right.
So, all right, you guys, thanks so much for watching and listening. If you want to hear the audio version of all the Serial Streamers episodes, make sure you're subscribed to my podcast, Murderish. Murderish is available in all podcast players. If you want to watch these episodes of Serial Streamers, catch them on my YouTube channel at Jamie on Air. That's Jami on Air. And basically, Serial Streamers is a true crime TV club. It's virtual. If you're out there watching all these true crime documentaries like Jussie and I are, and you don't really have somebody, in your life to talk about it with, well, you can talk about it with us. So after we cover these documentaries on Serial Streamers, on the podcast, on my YouTube, then we go to my social media comments and we talk about it. And let me tell you, those conversations are lit.
Oh my
the
God.
Comment
and they're good.
Are good.
I know.
People bring up, I am very impressed with people's like sleuthing skills.
I know.
Like I think sometimes I think of everything and I'm like, I didn't think of that.
Right.
You know, so come to my comments, follow me on social media. After you watch the documentary, we'll chat about it together. Thoughts, theories, hot takes. It's a safe space, I promise. And remember, be that bitch when it comes to your safety. Always cover your drink when you're out, lights on at night. And if you feel like something's off, it probably is. Trust your gut. Stay safe.